Okay, so we're moving to item P2. And that item is to receive a presentation from West Contra Costa Unified School District's Interim Superintendent Kim Moses regarding the West Contra Costa Unified School District's enrollment, attendance, budget projections, and data on current accomplishments of students, teachers, and schools.
Thank
If there's
you.
anyone joining us online that would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand at this time.
Dr. Moses, thank you very much for coming. You may have a seat over there. You will be able to see the slides and ask the IT team to move the slides as you speak. I just wanted to sincerely thank you, not just for the job you're doing at the school district, but also agreeing to come to tonight and present to us. Please, go ahead. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. Good evening, Mayor Martinez and council members. I appreciate this opportunity to address the council tonight as the interim superintendent of the West Contra Costa School District. I come to this role with 30 years of experience in education. Early in my career, I served as 12 years as a teacher in Oakland Unified School District, and this is my 18th year serving the West Contra Costa Unified School District and its surrounding communities. I've served as a principal for 15 years in our district. I've served as a coordinator of intervention planning in our district, and most recently, I held the position of Associate Superintendent Chief Business Official. I am a native of Richmond. I am homegrown, having been educated in the Richmond Unified School District and the University of California, Berkeley, to prepare for this work in our district. I attended King Elementary School, preschool to 6th grade, Adams Junior High School, and I am an alumni of the Kennedy High School class of 1989. I am humbled to serve our community and commit to doing this work to improve the outcomes for our children while planning for increased success in our programs and our schools to ensure that every educational space is welcoming and effective for all. Tonight's presentation is an update on some of the current work, some of the current data related to the work in our district, and also to provide context for some concerns related to services in our community, but more specifically, our services to our children. And with that, if we could bring up the presentation. I'm not quite sure. Do I work the system?
Are you able to see the slides on the computer?
Not yet.
KCRT team, could you please help our presenter?
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you. And will I advance slides from here?
You ask him to move forward.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. I think we're ready to begin. Next slide, please. I first want to begin the presentation by sharing our demographics. Who do we serve? Next slide. These infographics show not only the map of the surrounding communities that we serve, but also some of the demographics most recently updated for the 23-24 school year, showing that we have over 25,000 students, and we have over 3,100 staff members that we serve every day, with Richmond being the largest community where we have schools, services, staff, and students. Next slide. I begin this presentation with a focus on enrollment. If you've been following trends in education, I think it is common knowledge that California is experiencing an enrollment decline. I'm not sure that it's common knowledge that enrollment and attendance is how all school districts are funded. Our region and the state as a whole, we're experiencing this decline in school enrollment, and West Contra Costa specifically has decreased 9.5% in the past 5 years. This article referenced on this slide outlines some of the issues with enrollment and how it impacts our district budget. I begin with this so that I can set the tone for some of the slides and the following in this presentation as we discuss some of our current issues. Next slide. This is a slide specific to West Contra Costa Unified. It shows our enrollment trends, but not only does it show our trends since 2018-19 school year, it shows our funding levels. The purple line shows how we're funded. We're funded per pupil, and the dotted red line shows our average daily attendance. After the COVID-19 pandemic, the state changed its rules on funding and allowed us to use a 3-year average. So they did that in order for us not to have a significant dip immediately in our budget as enrollment declined after the pandemic. This has been a savior for our district, and it's allowed us a soft landing space as we make adjustments to budget and services to match the incoming revenue. Next slide. I wanted to just share a graphic to demonstrate how the city of Richmond is represented within our district. This is an enrollment and an attendance slide by city. So what this slide shows is that the city of Richmond, the enrollment totals are 10,577 students. This is as of March 1st of 2025. The city of Richmond represents nearly half of our current enrollment. When we look at the absence rates, because we are not funded by number of students enrolled, we are funded by number of students who attend school each day, you can also see that there's a significant concern about the average daily attendance of our Richmond students. Currently, the absenteeism rate is 44.5%. This is an area of concern for the district, and we're working on many strategies and mitigations in order to support students and families so that we can increase that average daily attendance. Next slide. So I just want to summarize some of the demographic data related to our district. Since the 2019-2020 school year, our enrollment has declined by 2,671 students, or as referenced, 9.5% of our enrollment. School site staffing correlates directly to student enrollment. One of the things that must happen as enrollment declines is we must also adjust our staffing levels in order to stay in line with revenue and expenditures. Richmond residents make up approximately 43.1% of all WCCUSD students, and the rate of chronic absenteeism for Richmond students is about 56.3% of all chronically absent students across the district. Since 2019-20, the average daily attendance has declined in our district by 3,193 students. This decline results in reduced potential revenue of approximately $35.1 million. Next slide. Now I'd like to share with you some of the fiscal concerns and some of the things we're doing to mitigate this in order to ensure that we can continue to provide high levels of service across our schools. Next slide. This slide demonstrates comparative data of our unrestricted revenue, expenditures, and ending balances. We're going to speak of budget in two ways. Unrestricted revenues is the operating budget that takes care of all of our base expenses for our schools. Later, I'll introduce restricted revenues, which are revenues that must be assigned to restricted purposes only. So what this slide shows is our unrestricted revenue and the balances from 2017 to the current year and the estimated balances for the 3 years out. You'll notice that the revenue has fluctuated. We've had some years of increases and some years of decline. But if you notice that red line that demonstrates the expenses, that red line, when it exceeds the blue lines, means we've spent more money in unrestricted balance than we've received. To add to this budget story, the gold line at the bottom is our ending balance. Now, what the ending balance makes up is the 3% required reserve that we must hold or set aside year after year in order to satisfy a requirement of the state. Next slide, I think there's a fly-in. Yes. So if you look here, it's estimated that in the 26-27 school year, we can only, well, these levels of 3% reserves will be impacted. Next slide. I believe the information is on the slide in. We are able to meet this with reductions. Click again. One more time. So the table up top shows what happens if we implement our fiscal solvency plan. If we implement our fiscal solvency plan, we are able to meet the 3% reserve requirement. If we do not implement a fiscal solvency plan, then our story changes to the bottom left, and you'll show that we are not able to have a balance in the budget that allows for us to satisfy the 3% reserve requirement. There is a slide later in the presentation that will further explain this. Next slide. So WCCUSD has a deficit problem. The deficit problem is not new, and we've been addressing this problem year over year. However, the deficit problem has become more of an urgent and immediate issue as the COVID-19 pandemic funding has expired, and the restricted revenues that were very liberal, allowing us to support some of our base needs, are no longer available for use. So since 2018, we've been experiencing a structural deficit. And 4 out of the last 6 years, expenses outpaced revenues. We must maintain that 3% reserve. If we don't maintain the 3% reserve, our budget will not be approved by the County Office of Education in a positive manner, resulting in a potential loss of local control of our decision-making. Our Board of Education has proactively created a policy that mandates a 6% reserve for internal economic uncertainty. The 3% reserve that we hold for the state can only be used if there's a state economic emergency and still be compliant. So we need our own reserve account in order to support the uncertainty of the economy and any unforeseen expenses that come up and need to be addressed within our unrestricted general fund. What is happening currently is we have a plan where we expect to exhaust our internal reserves, which we refer to as Fund 17, over the next 4 years, even as we implement reductions. Next slide. So this slide demonstrates our reserve balances. The 6% requirement is a policy approved by our board in order to ensure that we can address any fiscal emergencies that arise. This balance has stayed consistent, which means that our savings account, which I will refer to it here on this slide, is stable so that we have that available for surprises. But I'd like to draw your attention to fiscal year 2020. Fiscal year 2020 was a year similar to our current reality, where we simply did not have enough money to cover the expenditures in our budget, and therefore we had to draw from those reserves. With the implementation of pandemic funds, thankfully we were able to replenish those in 2021 and continue to have a balance, an internal fiscal reserve for uncertainties. There's a resolution related to this fund, and these monies must have permission from the board in order for them to be used within our operating budget. Next slide. This slide shows our fiscal reduction plan, and this slide comes from our first interim report, which was presented by the Business Services team in December. What this multi-year projection shows is that the highlighted area shows that we are going to need to contribute to our budget from this reserve account in order to ensure that we can have enough revenue to meet our expenditures. So on this slide, we're showing the withdrawals that are going to be required according to this first interim report. We will have a second interim report, and unfortunately, the second interim report is going to show that in the 25-26 school year, we may need to dip further into those reserves, making the out years a little more uncertain. Next slide. So this slide, and if you could click in, I believe there's a fly-in. There you go. This slide I'd like to just share with the council that we have been working really hard across our district with our partners to identify reductions in order to implement a fiscal solvency plan at the same time as we're expending our reserves in order to make sure that our expenditures can be taken care of with the revenue that we have on hand. So we have identified $7 million in reductions for the next school year. We were very fortunate to be able to identify reductions in the central office mostly. And due to vacancies that we currently have in our district, we do not anticipate that we will actually have to issue a May 15th layoff notice to any more than a few people. And this is because once we go through the process of identifying positions that are impacted by reductions, we do believe that everyone will have a position to be offered so that the employment within our district can continue. We've identified another issue in that in the 26-27 school year, we need to identify another $6 million in reductions. We have done some preliminary work of estimating where those reductions can come from. But the reality is, last year we did great work with all of our labor unions to identify $19 million in reductions that we implemented this year. The deep reductions that we did last year allowed us to be in this position where we're still able to implement a plan to write our budget. However, last year's cuts were, they were pretty bare bones. The cuts that we made, the reductions that we made, were made collaboratively in order to ensure that we could achieve the results of fiscal solvency. We don't have any additional areas in school sites where we believe reductions can be made. So we're at the point where reductions are now we're gonna need to look at services if we don't make some pretty critical decisions in order to ensure that our revenue and our expenditures are balanced. I also want to highlight here the amount of the 3% reserve requirement, which is highlighted in yellow. So for the current year, 24-25, we must keep $16.6 million in the books at all times. It's a requirement of the state. That is 3% of our expected expenditures, and it's what's required for our multi-year budget. For 25-26, you'll see the 3% reserve is expected to be about $15.9 million or $16 million roughly. That's based upon the level of expenditures anticipated in that year. 3% of expenditures must be set aside as a rule. Next slide. This slide shows our revenue and the increases in revenue over since the fiscal year 2017. These data numbers come from our unaudited actuals, and you'll find at the end of this presentation, I have links to all of the resources for the data provided in this presentation. The data has been vetted and approved, and it is available for you to review on your own as well. What this slide shows is that the local control funding formula, which is the bulk of our unrestricted funds since 2017, has increased about 26%. Our issue in trying to address our budgetary, the balance within our budget, is that that lime-colored line on the bottom that says contributions to restricted programs. You can see that we've increased our contributions to our restricted programs, such as special education and restricted maintenance, by 41%. These are also mandates by the state and mandates by our program. We must provide a high level of service for our special education students in order to meet our the requirements to ensure that their education is adequately addressed and the cost of doing business is going up. So as we're seeing an increase in our revenue, we're also seeing an increase in the cost of doing business, not only with those contributions, but across the board. The next slide will show the expenditures and the rate of increase for the expenditures. You'll see that since these numbers also come from our unaudited actuals, the certificated salaries since 2017 have increased by 25%. The employee benefits, the cost of those have increased by 44%. I won't read the entire slide, but if you take a look at all of the color-coded data points, you'll see that there are increases across the board. The one area in which we show a decrease is books and supplies, and the reason for this is we are able to use restricted resources to purchase supplemental curriculum and some of the materials and supplies that we provide for our schools. So one of the ways in which we've been trying to avail more money in our unrestricted general fund is to shift any services that are allowable over to the restricted side of the house, and most of that comes in the form of materials and supplies. Next slide. So this slide shows a combined general fund, which includes the restricted and unrestricted revenue. If you look at the bottom, the total of restricted revenue is $370 million, but the total, the total expenditures was $416 million. So you see there where there is a mismatch, an imbalance to what we're spending and what we have available. So our base district expenses exceeded the totality of the unrestricted general fund budget. Now, some of these base expenses were able to live in the restricted side of the house because the services fall under the restricted category. However, the positions are positions that are a part of our core program. Next slide. So here I'd like to show you the totality of our unaudited actuals, the end-of-year balance. I know that there was some concern that there may be money available that the district has not used in order to better position some of the decisions related to salaries and programs, but I'd like to show how that actually plays out. So if you look at the purple line, that is the balance of all restricted accounts. We did end the 23-24 school year with $101 million in our restricted fund balance. But the restricted funds can only be used for stated purposes related to the grants, and they may not be included in the operating budget for base expenses. Then the second line shows that we have $37.6 million in Fund 17 reserves. Again, those are the internal reserves that must be used to address economic uncertainty. One-time monies, once they're spent, they are gone, not to return to the balance sheet. And then that third line is the 3% reserve that we must keep on hand as a state requirement. It cannot be spent. And also, there was a fund balance of $7.7 million after last year's books were closed. That totals $162.5 million at the conclusion of last year's budget when we reviewed our actual expenses and revenues. But these are the balances, and these are the restrictions on those balances. Next slide. I just wanted to share here an example of the restricted balance detail, and I apologize that the print is so small. But the question may come up, what is that $101 million in restricted funds? This sheet is actually copied directly from our unaudited actuals, and it shows the balance of all of these restricted accounts. And if you take a look, you can pretty quickly come to the conclusion that these monies are restricted in specific areas. For example, arts and music instructional materials discretionary block grant has to be used for those purposes. Child nutrition can only be spent on nutrition. Early learning opportunity programs can only be spent on intervention services in our neediest schools. So every one of these restricted resources has a purpose related to its spending, and it cannot be added to any negotiated agreement. It cannot be added to any of the operating expenses related to our day-to-day operations of the district. Next slide. So as a summary to this budget information, we just want to share that we're working really hard to address the structural deficit within our unrestricted general fund. We are focused on preserving the quality of service for students and retaining quality staff. And I will share here that we do understand that in terms of attracting and retaining staff, we have some work to do. And we must look for ways to increase our total compensation package. I absolutely agree with that. And we're trying to find ways to do that. However, for the level that we're already extended for expenditures, we're needing to try and figure out how that can be done. I also want to share that the supplemental services are primarily provided through the restricted funds. So even though there is a very tight unrestricted operating budget, you saw on the previous slide that we have a very healthy restricted balance that can go to things like instructional interventions, additional supported sites. There are lots of quality additions to programs that those restricted funds bring, but they cannot fund a contract. Also, there is new uncertainty with potential changes in the federal grant funding structures. We receive approximately $30 million annually in federal grants. We are unsure in this moment what is going to happen to the future of those grants. However, we have not made any adjustments to our budget, and we're hoping not to need to do that. But I point that out because as we begin to look forward into how we're planning for our budget, we must also remember that there may be some impact assigned or sent down from the federal government that may cause us to need some shifts in our restricted budgets. The good news is our unrestricted operating budget is not related to any federal grant resource, but it could impact our ability to provide supplemental services if there's a shift. And lastly, I just want to say that we're really grateful to the work of our board to ensure that we have a 6% reserve, because a 6% reserve is really allowing us to continue to have a positively certified budget as we work to align our expenses and revenue to address the structural deficit. Next slide. So I just want to spend a very brief time on just some comparative data, because I know that as a city council, not only are you invested in our students, but you're also invested in our staff and our families and how we attract staff to our district. The majority of our employees are likely Richmond residents. So I want to share with you raw data on exactly where we stand as we compare to other surrounding districts, and acknowledge that we do have work to do. Next slide. So I'm going to go through this quickly, but I invite in-depth questions should you have them after the presentation is over. This first slide is comparative data of the average daily attendance and the staffing of surrounding districts. I selected the districts that we typically look at as a leadership team and with our labor partners to compare our level of service. And you'll see that West Contra Costa is in the middle here. Our staffing, as it directly relates to enrollment in ADA, we rank 5 out of these 9 total districts in ADA revenue collected. So we are about a mid-sized district, not the largest, not the smallest, but mid-sized. Next slide. This shows our class size data. What is the teacher-to-student ratio for the separate grade levels across our system? And on this slide, what you'll see is that West Contra Costa ranks second for class size for the younger kids, but in the other grades we're pretty average. Class size determines the number of teaching positions we need. If we lower class sizes, we need more teachers. So the ADA to teacher ratio for West Contra Costa is 1 teacher for every 17.9 students. However, the class sizes vary across the grade level. It's not the assignment, that's the budget. Okay. Next slide. Employer benefits. So we understand that the benefits that you offer your staff members really do make a difference in whether they will pick you as their employer or not. Benefit structures vary greatly, and that's the purpose of this slide. Districts value different things. However, how you structure your benefits typically is considered a part of your full compensation packet. And you can see here that for the benefits for single, West Contra Costa is one of the bottom 2. But the benefits for 2-party or for family, we are I would say approximately in the middle of the 9 districts. Next slide. And finally, looking at salary compensation, this is where we understand some work needs to be done. Salary structures vary based upon steps and columns in the salary schedule. Our district ranks last in starting salary, and that's a problem. Our district ranked 7th in average salary and 6th in highest salary. So we recognize and are fully committed to addressing these issues as we work to attract talented and qualified staff for our schools. Next slide. So looking ahead, I also wanted to share with you some of the other areas in which we're working really hard to build better programs for our students in our schools. Next slide. I wanted to start with our core value. Coming in as the interim superintendent, I met with the cabinet and we realigned and re-examined our goals and priorities and came up with a new core value statement. WCCUSD is committed to making student-centered decisions that support effective learning environments and promotes improved systems across the WCCUSD. We are owning that we have work to do in order to promote and improve systems, and we're dedicated to doing that. Next slide. I wanted to share, above all, this is about students. It's about the students we serve. It's about achieving results for students. It's why we're working so hard to attract talent and skilled teachers to support our students, because we want to increase our level of achievement. I've done a comparative data slide here to show at the top our most recent published data, and this data is coming from CASP, the California Assessment for Student Performance and Progress. And you'll see the first data point is from 23-24, the middle data point is from 2018-19, and the final data point is from 2014. We understand that we have a lot of work to do with programming, and this slide shows that while we're making some gains, we still have a lot of work that we need to do collaboratively together to ensure that we improve our systems for students. Currently this year, we have nearly 48% of our students have not met the basic standard for ELA. And I won't go over all of the slides, but you can see the trend is we've had some slight improvements in the exceeding and met standard, but unfortunately our number of students not meeting the expectation has increased. We are still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, and we understand that that plays a role, which is why we are focusing heavily on intervention services for our students as well as good training for our staff. Next slide. This is the same slide, but it shows the math data, also same 3 years of points, also same trend, a slight increase in number of students exceeding and meeting standards, but also a slight increase in students not meeting standards. Next, so we've got a lot of work to do, and we want to do it together for our students. Next slide. So where are we focused? We're focused on student-centered decisions. We're focused on quality Tier 1 instruction across all grade levels. We have made some curricular choices that are not working in all of our communities, and we're working really hard, especially in the area of ELA, to ensure that all schools, all teachers have quality Tier 1 instruction that allows our students access to the materials that they need to become more proficient. We're also increasing authentic engagement with our students, our families, and our community organizations across all school structures. With the leadership of our teachers union, we have engaged in Community Schools Initiative, where we are really working with community school managers, community-based organizations, our teachers, families, and staff in order to make sure that what's offered at the school site meets the needs of the community. We are also really focused on attracting, supporting, and retaining quality staff to support student success. We did much better this year with filling our vacancies. However, we are acknowledging that vacancies still exist, but want to point out that that isn't just the reality of West Contra Costa, but it is the reality across the state due to declining pool of available and licensed teachers. We also are looking to refine supplemental services using those restricted funds in order to better support students who require more intervention. And then finally, we have a strategic plan that was created by Dr. Hurst, our previous superintendent. We are focused on brave minds, bold leaders, and big dreams. And the cabinet is working to refine that plan in order to ensure that it is digestible and also that it is the plan that will carry us into future success. Next slide. So, collaborative structures, we really need the support of the City Council, the city as a whole, and we're always looking for ways that we can collaborate and work together to support effective schools and serve our communities together. Some of the things that we're already doing is a community schools initiative that I mentioned. Also, there's a systems change collaborative where the surrounding cities come together to discuss issues of importance and ways in which the cities can collaborate with the school district to address concerns. We have an active attendance campaign in order to increase ADA, recognizing that if we get more students attending school regularly on an average daily basis, then the revenue will also increase. We're looking for support with a community safety and school traffic safety plan. This is a concern across all of our schools because school dismissal and school drop-off does get congested, and having the support of city government would help us to address that more effectively. We're also leveraging community partnerships and would like to do that in conjunction with the City of Richmond. We are most recently invested in supporting the workforce housing initiatives. We believe that if we're able to do that for staff members, that would then draw more qualified, skilled applicants to our district. And finally, our families need a lot of support, and we're looking for ways in which we can collaborate and build structures to support our families that have socioeconomic challenges, because we know those challenges also contribute to some of the challenges that we experience with our academic growth with the students in our schools. Next slide. All right, so I want to close out this presentation with just some information about some of the great things that are happening around the town. This presentation was meant to be informative, but by no means is it meant to define who we are as a district. We have talented teachers, we have great staff, and we have dedicated people who show up every day in order to ensure that students have great learning environments and that they are thriving and have the conditions to do so. So here are a few things that are happening around our town. Next slide. I wanted to highlight Richmond High. Richmond High robotics team, they've been recognized in many different circles as being an elite group for robotics. They've won countless competitions, and most recently, they participated in a film release for Rule Breakers. And not only will they be credited in the film, but they attended an exclusive screening of the film. So they recorded some authentic audio for this film, which was pretty excited for the team. Next slide. I also want to highlight that one of our graduates from Richmond High School has received a full ride scholarship to Columbia University. We are very proud of Cecia Mejia, Richmond High senior, for accomplishing this very prestigious scholarship. Next slide. We also would like to acknowledge our Changemaker Award winner, Mr. Rob Kirker, who's a teacher at Lincoln Elementary School. Mr. Kirker was recently honored by the Chamberlain Foundation for the great work that he's doing with the sixth graders at Lincoln Elementary School, and he is receiving recognition, but I just want to also lift up that he is one of many of our teachers that deserves this recognition. Next slide. We are very proud of our Greenwood Academy program. They were recently awarded an official California Continuation Model School Award, and so they were one of 74 schools that the state has recognized as having an outstanding program that provides comprehensive services to our at-risk youth. And I also want to share that we found out today that one of our schools has been selected as a California Distinguished School, the West County Mandarin School, which was housed in Richmond, is now housed in Pinole. However, many of our Richmond residents attend that school. They are a California Distinguished School, which is an honor bestowed upon schools that the state recognizes as being excellent. Next slide. So this concludes my presentation, but I did include at the end of the presentation a couple of resource slides that I'd just like to explain to you. We hit one more slide. These are links to all of our financial resources. You can look at all of our financial reports by the links in this presentation, and that goes back the last 3 years. This also includes, we were audited frequently, but we went through a comprehensive audit by the FCMAT, the Fiscal FCMAT, Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team. When we were really experiencing difficult times with our budget, we were recommended to go through this screening, and they did find that we are improving in our structures in order to ensure that we can meet our financial obligation. But I invite you to review these reports and review these letters as listed here, because they do tell the story of what's happening with the West Contra Costa financial picture. Next slide. And finally, here's a data resource. This is where the academic data came from. You can use any one of these resources to gain in-depth access to what's happening in our schools. Any information that you'd like to know about, you can learn from one of these 3 sources. EdData will give you lots of financial and demographic data. The CASP website will share with you our current and historical academic data. And DataQuest is one, it has a combination of lots of things, but you can find information there like our dropout rate, our course enrollment rate, our discipline data, and our graduation rates. So I just wanted to provide you with some additional resources where you can further look into the things that are happening at our district. With that, I'm going to close the presentation just with another acknowledgement of thanking you for giving me this opportunity, and just wanting you to really understand that as I stand here, born and raised in this great city of Richmond, wanting to do service, wanting to provide great service to our community, to our students and our families. It is my goal, as it is also the goal of our school board, to make the decisions that's going to be best for the outcomes for our students. It is with that focus that I approach this work, and I will continue to have that focus in this work and make the difficult decisions in order to ensure that our students have the best possible opportunities for positive outcomes in the future, and also to be able to retain control of our district by not making a budget decision that will take us backwards into fiscal insolvency. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I think we're going to go directly to public comment, and then we'll come back for council questions and commentary.
Okay, we have 6 speakers in person. Anyone that would like to address the council that's joining us online, please raise your hand at this time. Speakers are Don Gosney, Mark Wasberg, Mark Mitchell, Jamin Purcell, Sam Cleary, and Cordell Hindler. Don Gosney.
As I commented earlier this month, I believe it is extremely bad form for one elected body to step in to tell another elected body how to do their jobs, especially when the elected body being lorded over was elected by a much larger electorate than the ones trying to take control. Exactly who died and made you overseers of the West Contra Costa Unified School District? I'm pretty heavily involved in the local electoral process, and with the exception of a co-partnership between some of the candidates for school district trustee and those seeking ownership of a city council seat or members of the social club they affiliate with, I never saw any of your names on the ballot when we elected district trustees. Where do you get the arrogance to assume that as a collective body, you have the right to tell these trustees what to do? Let's keep in mind that last week, one of you called up one of the trustees and tried to bully the trustee into doing your bidding. At last week's board meeting, one of you rose to violate the rules governing speaking and took the place of another council member who had signed up to speak and spoke in her stead. And then we had a third council member who spoke via phone. Let's not forget that each of you, the 3 of you, made mention that you were speaking as a member of the Richmond City Council, which suggested to the people listening that you were speaking for the Richmond City Council, which further suggested that you were speaking for the people of Richmond, all without benefit of actually getting the blessing of the people you were speaking on behalf of. And from the comments made by members of this council and by others speaking on behalf of those council members and their supporters, we're hearing so-called facts about the district's budget that we have zero reason to believe to be facts. If this were a court of law, someone would object because this is hearsay testimony and not best evidence. If we're to be expected to believe these second, third, and fourth-hand comments from people affiliated with the county and state education departments, Let's get it from the horse's mouth. I attend pretty much all of the school board meetings from start to finish, but what I learned tonight was illuminating. I thank Dr. Moses for her great presentation. The district has problems and that this council can't fix. We've lost more than $30 million per year, partly because students have relocated to the 12 charter schools in Richmond, plus the extremely high chronic absenteeism. If you want to help, maybe you can knock on doors and convince parents to send their kids to school. Thank you.
Mark Wasberg.
She talks about federal money. Well, Trump's going to be cutting off that money because he's getting out of the education business. I said the state of California spent millions of dollars, $50 million attacking Trump, 66, I think, was billion dollars on a high-speed rail that don't even run. They spent all these millions of dollars on this DEI and woke garbage, other millions of dollars to support the homeless so they could have a freebie in life. It's the state that controls the money. Every time there's a budget cut, education gets the axe. And all these other people getting all these millions of dollars. It's your legislature and your governor that's doing it to the education system. But you people don't realize what's really happening. I mean, the people of California are so stupid to put these people into office. The city council can't do nothing to help education. What are you going to do? You're going to give them the money? When Trump's going to cut it off, even the universities are getting the axe. You're having scholars are getting laid off. It's going to get real bad when Trump's going to start cutting off all the money. And you had all these students at Richmond High School walking down the street and protesting about budget cuts. People are moving out of Richmond. They're going to other communities, other cities, other states. They don't want to be in the ghetto down here in Richmond. It's the most disgusting place to live. If you're going to go to school, Deanna's flourishing. All these other places are flourishing. When I went to Richmond High, we had so many people we didn't want to do with. We had football, we had track, we had wrestling, we had golf, we had archery. But the economy's changing. I look at Richmond High now, it looks like it's deserted because people are moving out. By the way, you transgenders are a bunch of scum and garbage.
Your time has expired. Mark Mitchell.
Thank you. Thank you for having Dr. Moses here tonight to speak about the state of our schools. I wanted to provide another perspective, the perspective of the frontline educators. I'm Mark Mitchell, Executive Director of the United Teachers of Richmond, and I'm here to report the lamentable state of our district and that the Richmond schools are currently unstaffable. And they're being made more unstable every day by management decisions that frankly we find puzzling. We're not sure what's going on. That's why we've asked for the assistance of the city to look into this and help us suggest changes that would better serve Richmond students and families. The superintendent noticed 75 layoffs that she saw. 68 were approved by our school board under duress. Then it turned out only one, we were told HR had only served one notice after this weeks and weeks of instability and uncertainty and despair. Only one person was laid off. And then this week we found out people are receiving these notices in the mail and up to 8 people now may have been laid off. But when we asked the district how this could happen, they said, we don't know, we outsourced the layoff process to our law firm in Pleasant Hill, and we didn't actually send the letters out, so we don't know who is really actually getting notices. So this kind of instability is unnecessary. It's hurting our students, it's hurting our schools, and it's hurting the city of Richmond. Slide 3 is misrepresenting the average daily attendance. It looks like it's falling off precipitously when the reality is it's going down by less than 1% a year. It's a manageable amount. For skilled administrators like Dr. Moses, they can address that and handle it without calamity. We have so many vacancies that some of our schools are completely in a free fall. For example, Greenwood Academy that Dr. Moses highlighted has a 25% vacancy rate today. Those students had no science teacher all year and they're doing PE on a computer with a non-credentialed person watching the door while they're told to do PE on the computer. Perry's Elementary has 9 vacancies for next year out of a faculty of 20.
Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Jamin Purcell.
I want to thank you for the presentation, but I just have some questions that I don't know if they really fully got answered. I would like to know more specifically about what you guys are doing in order to be able to attract and keep staff. We shouldn't be a training ground. We should be a place that we can have lifelong teachers. When we're talking about high school class sizes, they seem way off compared to others, and this seems to be a real challenge when we're trying to do recruitment. Benefits as well, they're really low, and we have some of the lowest starting pay. When you're trying to talk to a new teacher, how are we going to actually attract that if we are offering something that you can't actually live off of within the Bay Area? I think that, you know, we desperately need education right now, as we can see all over the country. We have an attack on education, and unfortunately, the thing that people don't realize is you got to pay people. People have to be paid in order to be able to make sure that they can live in order to be able to educate other people's children. As well, the current setup seems to be roughly for like very early career and like single high school teachers. It like doesn't seem like it's looking for it to be able to have a long-term trajectory for these teachers, and this is a real issue. We need to be making sure that we're not just starting and training teachers and then they go off to a different, better funded community in order to be able to educate those kids. While new teachers are cheaper, I really do think we also should be appealing to the late and mid-career folk. It's a smaller pool, but I think that they as well bring in a wealth of experience. But again, we got to start raising salaries, and that will help with recruitment. As well, I have a fear of the threat of ICE within our schools. And so I would really like to know what we're doing to protect our students. Thank you.
Sam Cleary.
Good evening. In the presentation, it was stated that over 40% of Richmond students are chronically absent. As a teacher at Siege Elementary for 7 years, I can say that one of the biggest causes of truancy is a staff vacancy crisis. Students lacked permanent credentialed teachers every year. Parents called the children's educational experience musical chairs due to the dysfunction and disrespect. Students would cry and get split into different classrooms. There wouldn't be a teacher waiting for them at the line for the first day of school. We need to listen to the community. We need to prioritize Richmond students. Instead of blaming Richmond families for the problems of the school district, we need to guarantee Richmond's children they'll have teachers. Thank you.
Our last in-person speaker is Cordell Handler, and then we'll move to the online speakers.
Yeah. Oh, I think she was ahead of me. Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
So good evening again, Mayor Martinez, Council. Thank you, Dr. Moses, for joining us today. So one of the things that I've noticed in the picture, in one of the slides, number 30, how can the district and the city collaborate? One of the things that I was thinking of is like, you know, we need affordable housing in Richmond, not only for families, but you also have teachers. We have a teacher shortage. Because when I was looking at the article that the district has some cuts, I was offended because we need to keep our teachers, because right now the students are like, they have concerns. It's like whenever they walk into a new classroom, it's like you can't figure out who they go to. But it's like we need to keep our teachers, because if we want the teachers to stick around, we need them, because right now, and I hate to say this, but we need education in our city. But how can the city and the district collaborate? Is like partnerships, you know, like have like a joint meeting between the city and the district, you know, because your constituents are very concerned about what's going to happen, why their child is absent. Think about that for a while. Think.
And that was our last in-person speaker. That was our last in-person speaker.
I'm so sorry. Maybe I put the wrong item number on it, but I did turn one in when it was still during public comment, so it was definitely early enough.
And allow her to speak. Do you want to allow her to, please?
Oh, okay.
She signed up for P1.
She signed up for
P1
P1?
and not P2.
Oh, instead of P2?
Do you want to speak under P1?
I wanted to speak under P2, I just made a
Okay.
mistake.
All right.
Okay,
What's the name?
I'll allow you.
Thank you so much.
Gabby?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if I prepared a document that shows the reality of our salary and compensation as compared to the other districts. The district showed, because last year many of them got raises and even pretty significant raises. We were told there was no money due to the structural deficit, so our members did not get a raise this year. So actually that puts us at 8th in highest salary, 7th in average, and due to the higher salaries this year, I'm sure we'll be even lower in average salary by the time this year's unaudited actuals come out. I also on the back went through some of the slides just to notice some things. Dr. Moses did talk about how we've had a 9.5% decline in students since 1920. In that same time, we've had a 9.3% decline in educators. So those actually kind of match up. On slide 16, when she talks about restricted funds, I do want to point out that 1/3 of our certificated salaries last year did come from restricted funds. It was 60 million out of 178 million. Although positions are required to be covered by a sub or overtime, many are not right now. For example, our coaches that are included in calculations do not have subs. WCCUSD also had the option for 10 million more in revenue, 5 more for a math curriculum adoption, and 5 for additional counselors at our highest need schools like Kennedy, Verde, Stige. But the superintendent rejected them and said we do not need the money. For slide 18, the Learning Block Emergency Recovery Grant has some of the largest amount of money in the restricted, and I included language from the Ed Code section where it can be used to decrease or stabilize staff to pupil ratios and based on pupil learning needs. For slide 22, class size in our 6 to 8 is actually 35, not 30. It's 36 for non-core subjects, and 193 of our educators took above class size maximums last year and 215 this year. And many of the districts now provide 100% employer-paid healthcare. Thank you so much.
Okay, and that was our last in-person speaker. Now we'll move to the online speakers, and we have 3 speakers.
The speakers are Jesse Turan, Francisco Ortiz, and LaShonda. Jesse Turan, you may begin. You will each be given 2 minutes to speak.
Hello, I'm Jesse Turan, and I am an unhoused resident of Richmond. Now, I understand that with the teacher salaries that you're working with a very limited budget. I get that. And I also get that it's scary with the federal government budget cuts. You're going to have even less money probably in the near future. However, there's things Richmond could do for these teachers, like the other speakers said. Housing, for instance. Again, I'm an advocate for the homeless. I'm an advocate for more housing development. But for people middle income, like teachers, the development of tiny home communities, specifically for educators, specifically for people who are invested in our community, would be a huge deal. Right now, even a teacher's salary, it's going to be very, very hard for them to find a place to live in Richmond. Of course, we don't have educators. We need to, there are ways that the city could make it easier for educators to be here, for people to invest in our community. And you're going to have students who are invested when you have teachers who are invested. There's also things like possibly internships for high school or college students to allow them to teach. I know I have a master's degree in philosophy. I'm disabled. I can't work full time, but I would love to be able to teach kids part-time if there was a way for me to do that. But I'm stuck, in my bus because I can't leave my bus because I'm worried about it getting towed away. If I had a safe parking place, I could invest in the community. A lot of these problems stem from housing issues, stem from the city of Richmond refusing to support people who don't make a lot of money. And that needs to change. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Francisco Ortiz.
Good evening, council members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, council members and Mayor Martinez. My name is Francisco Ortiz. I'm a homegrown teacher from Richmond. I'm teaching at Ford Elementary for the past 11 years and serving as president for United Teachers of Richmond. I thank Superintendent Moses for coming and presenting you all with their perspective on the budget. However, some things that weren't shared in today's budget presentation, which has many data points from previous years, but just from this year alone, the district has admitted to under projected revenue by $18 million so far, which is a conservative estimate, and the district is going to approve a resolution to the board tomorrow stating that there is a structural deficit for this year for $18.5 million. It's pretty interesting that those two figures align up quite closely. They're also saying that bargaining unit salaries increased by $8 million this year. However, there is no STRS data to support this claim. And as was mentioned earlier, teachers did not receive a salary increase this year. And the fact that those bonuses that were agreed to last year were not included into the budget is also cause for concern. Fund 17 is at 37 million in the unaudited actuals. And in the second interim report, that budget actually increased 800,000 than what was actually budgeted in the adopted budget. One other thing that was not mentioned in today's presentation was that the budget projections for contracting services was up 41 million from the adopted budget. And, you know, those types of concerns should also be communicated to folks as, you know, some of these budget presentations and conversations are showing to serve a austerity narrative that
Thank you. Your
harms our
time has
students.
expired. That was our last speaker.
Thank you. Now it's time for comments from council. Do we have any? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Moses, for that amazing presentation and your dedication and commitment to the families and our youth. I have 3 quick questions. Given that Richmond students make up about 44%, you said, of the district, of the highest absenteeism in the district, how are we using that data to inform targeted investments for those students? And is there a threshold where that absenteeism is triggered?
Do you want me to answer one at a time?
However, you see fit.
Okay, so thank you for the question. When we look at the issue of absenteeism across our district, our strategy is multi-pronged. One of the things that we're doing is partnering with the RISE Center and holding SARB meetings with families that are truant or issues with chronic absenteeism. The purpose of including RISE in those meetings is to bring on more wraparound support for our families. We have a Department of Positive School Climate. The Department of Positive School Climate is leading the effort. We're also including every school has its own individual plan of how it's dealing with attendance, but those are managed in that department, and that department provides the support. And we also have several social workers that are identified to help families once we realize what their needs are. There was a comprehensive study of the root causes of what's happening with the attendance in our area, and I can't name the strategic points in this moment, but I can, if you would like for me to share the information with you after this presentation, because our Department of Positive School Climate has put together a plan to address the issues across the system.
Thank you. And I know you mentioned the root cause analysis, and that was my next question. What is coming up most for families and young people that's keeping our students out of the classroom?
Again, because I don't have the report
Oh,
in front
okay.
of me, I can't. I do remember that one of the issues was transportation.
Transportation.
And one of the things that I do know in the last presentation to the board, in fact, tomorrow night, there is going to be a presentation at our school board meeting about absenteeism in attendance. And that presentation will also share the strategies that you're asking about in this moment. I know that in the last presentation and the data that I received from the last Systems Collaborative meeting from LaShante Smith, who's our director of that department. She did make special mention of the Richmond Moves program and the support that that program is providing for families who identify that transportation is an issue for them.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, they're looking for remedies to share with families and support to provide to families, and that comprehensive presentation tomorrow should lend more information. It's actually posted to the website already.
Thank you so much. And lastly, just in the presentation, I don't know if on that sheet where things were really shrinking, I don't know if we talked about the CTE programs, but I had an opportunity to tour the multimedia and journalism program at Kennedy yesterday and to learn about the amazing work that they're doing there. And I'm wondering, are programs like that at risk of being cut, or will they be preserved?
No, well, those actually go above and beyond our base. And the way in which we fund CTE is that there are a lot of grant funds that the state makes available in order to shore up those programs. Our team in College and Career is looking for those. We're renewing grants we currently have, and we're seeking opportunities for new grants. But those grants come with a required match from our district, and we're actually investing quite a bit of our LCAP dollars, which are dollars to support students who have supplemental needs. So we have a robust investment in making sure that that program grows, but we also rely heavily on those restricted funds to support the growth, and we're hopeful that those funds are going to continue, and so far the indication from the state is that they will.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Moses.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Bonner?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Moses. Excellent presentation. I'm glad you presented a clear picture with all the issues and problems that the school district has versus a rosy picture that everything's okay. It's good to have a realistic view of things. And I just wanted to acknowledge Leslie Reckler, the president of the Board of Trustees, here with us. Thank you. I've had the privilege, actually, of visiting De Anza High School, which is in my district, as a community school. And I'm very glad to report that they're doing an excellent job in teaching dating matters to prevent gender-based violence, that start teaching early. And I hope with your collaboration, the school district collaboration, we can expand it to other schools. That's an awesome program. I have some questions for you. The frequent question that comes up from my community is access to school playgrounds, school sports facilities, theater, everything. As you're aware, residents pay a special tax for that access, MRAD, but we've never seen that access, especially in my district where it's an art desert. We don't have enough parks because we're surrounded by East Bay Regional Parks, and somehow the quota shows that, you know, the acreage of green area per residence is above average, but we don't have access to them as parks. So access to playgrounds are very important. And I wonder what we can do to remedy this.
Yes, thank you for the question. I also want to recognize our trustee Smith Folds is also here from our
sorry, I didn't see you
Board
with
of
your
Education,
face
and I
mask.
appreciate the
My apology.
support of both of them. We are absolutely appreciative of the funds that are generated by MRAD, and we hear the community loud and clear. They'd like longer access to parks that are connected to schools. We have tried to work on a solution that both meets the needs for security for our spaces and opening the spaces for our families and community members. We have given a directive that schools that have playgrounds and parks, those gates shall be open until dusk so that there is access for students to go in and be able to utilize the equipment. If there are areas in which that is not happening, I think we should encourage the community members to let us know. Sometimes it's as simple as reminding the custodian, do not lock the gate until dusk. So I think that we need to understand what's happening in the areas in order to address them, to ensure that there is access to those areas for our community members. I also want to name that for facilities use permits, we have wonderful spaces and we do make them available for the community, but there is a process to that, and we try really hard to ensure that the information is easily accessible online, but we do find that in some areas, for example, soccer fields are extremely popular, and they're popular in specific areas, and so sometimes we do have more requests than availability, but we work really hard to stick to our protocols and the procedures that are set forth for making those rental reservations, and so I do know that that is happening and that we are working really hard to be responsive to the needs of our sports teams and our youth, the ability of our youth to use those facilities.
Thank you. I'll be in touch with you about what email address the parents and residents need to report lack of access to school playgrounds, because that is very important. You talked about chronic absenteeism, and how is it defined to be chronically absent?
Yes. I believe that you begin to trigger truancy letters if you have 3 unexcused absences. The formula I don't have committed to memory, but it has to do also with how many absences are excused, how many are unexcused. But as a former principal, I do know that the trigger number was 10. If you miss more than 10 days of school across the school year, that's considered chronically absent.
So 10 days out of a school year would result in such a drop of the school budget?
Well, the reality is it's the rate of absenteeism, because it's not one individual student that's triggering this. It's the cumulative data of how many students are in the seats each day. So we're having too many students that are out frequently, raising that average of of empty seats per day. So it isn't, for the chronic absenteeism, it's like a root cause analysis. We're trying to identify those students who are missing the most school in order to address their issues to get them back. But the average daily attendance issue is a little different because that rate does not necessarily correlate to the 44% of absenteeism. We're missing about 10% each day of our students. We're not missing 40% each day. Does that make sense?
Thank you. And in one of the charts you showed, the expenses has increased substantially. Why? What justifies that expense increase?
Well, I don't have a comprehensive list in front of me, but I'll give an example. We have a step and column increase each year, so it automatically, even before we are looking at, we got an increase of COLA last year, and if I'm remembering correctly, it was about 2.03%, but this is memory. And our step and column increase equates to about 1.5% of our budget. So the entire COLA was eaten up by salary increases, but at the same time, we had increases in the rates of benefits. There were increases in the cost of goods and supplies. There were increases in the cost of services that we have to provide. For example, I heard somebody tonight talk about PG&E. Well, we're getting those PG&E increases as well. So the cost, when I say the cost of business is going up, it is the rate of the increase in what's happening across our economy. Schools are not exempt from that. So we have to adjust our budget in order to make sure that we're accounting for those increases as they come.
Thank you. And I understand that charter schools withdraw the budget from public schools. Why do you think this is the case? Why parents choose charter schools? Why public schools cannot compete with them?
Well, if we look deeper at the charter school data that was provided tonight, what we see is that charters are holding steady while districts are declining. So they aren't necessarily increasing in large numbers, but they are, their numbers are holding steady while ours are declining. I think we have a large system where we have 55 schools and about 25,000 students and 3,000 staff members, and that's a very different system from if you have a charter school with 12 classrooms and, you know, a very small system. I think that charter schools in some ways may be appealing because it's private, it feels privatized because it's a very small system. I've heard from some families that they feel like they're getting a more personalized service. And what we're doing as a district to counter that is while we do have 55 schools, we do believe that each one of those 55 schools can provide that same level of personalized service. However, when our parents look at our system, they see 55 schools and 25,000 students. They're not necessarily focusing on just their one school. I think that's one of our issues. When you look at the data, the achievement data, the data that you see at charter schools is not very different from the data that you see in the public schools. It isn't that they are achieving success rates at much higher levels. I'd have to go school by school, but thinking of the majority of what I've seen in terms of data, I attribute it to just a belief that their system might better serve the families, but not necessarily that being the result of what families experience. And as a result, we have a lot of families that come back to us from charter. So I believe that there may be a system of some going in and then some coming out, and there's just this revolving door. We do find that when parents return to us from charters, they are very satisfied and they have a comparative experience, and they recognize that we have great things to offer in our district as well.
Thank you. So you presented the number of students per teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be affected by the recent layoffs?
No. So the majority of structure, the way in which our schools are structured is almost entirely driven by our negotiated agreements. We must provide a teacher for the class sizes that have been negotiated with our labor unit. There's no scenario in which we don't do that because we have to abide by the contract. So the number of teachers that we need are actually dictated by that contract. And the class sizes are actually dictated by that contract. So I would say that's a shared responsibility in how we staff our schools because it's driven through the negotiations process.
And do you have any data on the number or percentage of substitutes you use instead of permanent teachers? Because it was mentioned that there are classes that don't have a teacher to welcome the students.
That is a great question. I don't have the data available in this moment, but I can say that we've really been employing some mitigation strategies to ensure that the substitutes that we do require to fill vacancies are quality substitutes. I can request the information from our Human Resources Department, but I know this year in particular we've had an increase in retirees that are filling those vacancies. The problem is retirees, they have an expiration because they can't work a full year due to their retirement status. So those are the kind of things that interfere with us being able to keep, especially in the case of a vacancy that's difficult to fill, in order to keep a consistent person for the entire year. There are restraints and that we have to work around. So I don't have those numbers for you. I can tell you that we have improved immensely, but there are some schools that are difficult to staff, and the schools that are difficult to staff are where we need to really focus our efforts in on doing better. But the reality is when we hire teachers, they have a choice of which school they choose. And per contract, if we have vacancies and we have available teachers, they get to pick from the vacancies. And if I were to be completely honest with you, our new hires and our current teachers are not choosing to go to those schools. And that is something that we're examining to try and figure out how we can address the, not just the climate and culture at those schools and the support of our teachers, but also how we bring people into our system and keep them into the system so that we can build stability at those schools that have a lot of vacancies and teachers that are coming in and out. It's just like every other issue. It's going to take a collaborative effort and really everybody focusing on what's best for kids in order to get to a solution where we can improve in that area.
Thank you. And I have a question out of curiosity. Under the new administration, there are talks about closing the Department of Education, which plays a very important role in a school. Are there any talks about giving the budget to the states directly, or what do you think may happen?
In this moment, there's just a lot of speculation. There's not a lot of direction or clear explanation of what next steps are. So unfortunately, I can't answer that. What I can say is that our state, the state of California, the Department of Education is extremely invested, and they're communicating extremely well on what they're doing to try and ensure that we can retain those funds and serve our students well and not have an interruption.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson?
Hi, Dr. Moses. I want to start by giving you really a sincere thanks for coming and talking to us today. And I want to I'm going to ask you some pointed questions, but I want to let you know that I know nobody agrees to be the interim superintendent of Richmond Public Schools because they don't care about Richmond students. And so this is coming from a place of wanting to understand better and see if some kind of common ground can be found. And somebody had raised during comments of that it's terrible that one governing body is asking another governing body questions, but I think this kind of interagency dialogue is actually valuable. And if you want to invite someone from the Richmond City Council to come to the school board meeting and talk about our expenditures on kids and stuff, I would actually welcome that. I hope that I don't want to put you on the hot seat and not have us be part of that conversation. Okay. So my first question is, I actually don't know the answer. I've heard different numbers, but how many, I guess are you calling them layoff notices, or it's sort of like a decision not to rehire a teacher year to year? So how many currently employed teachers are not going to be employed in the fall?
I really appreciate that question. So we follow a process that is actually dictated through education code as we try and ensure that our staffing is aligned with our needs. So we're required to issue preliminary notices of potential reduction in force. What has happened in this moment is that our business team, our human resources team, and our school board has assessed the need, and we anticipate that some reductions may be necessary, not only for fiscal solvency, but also in the case of expiring restricted funds. So notices that have been listed fall under those two categories. What staff members have gotten is a letter saying, look, we're not sure if this position is coming back. We want to let you know, but we're assessing, and we encourage you to look for other opportunities in our district should this position not return. However, there won't be any layoff notices or pink slip notices issued until May 14th. So nobody has been laid off. But people have been noticed that due to reductions and due to expiring grants, there may be some shifts. Our Human Resources Department is working really diligently right now in order to examine all of those scenarios. And what I was told just today is that if there are true layoffs needed, at most it would be no more than 3 teachers. And in the case of our classified staff that are impacted by a potential reduction in force, we have many vacancies that we feel like if there is someone impacted, as we approach this May 15th deadline, we absolutely have positions to offer them. The issue is we need time to examine whether grants are going to be renewed. If grants are renewed, those positions come back. If grants aren't renewed, we try and find additional resources, restricted resources, to keep supplemental positions. But what we're faced with right now is about, and I'm going to give you a round number, we had proposed, I'm not going to give you a number because I don't want to name a number that isn't accurate, but based upon what we proposed for fiscal reductions, we don't believe that we believe that people are going to find other spaces in the organization. So I understand the uncertainty is uncomfortable, and that there is concern on the part of labor and the part of our staff members, and what we try to do as a district is reiterate that we value our staff. We want to retain our staff, but we just need some time to evaluate what's happening with these positions and their funding sources in order to find out what we can offer staff in the future.
And so, sorry to, but just I appreciate the distinction between pink slips and what you're calling sort of these potential reduction in force letters. But do you know how many potential reduction in force letters have gone out to classified and teachers?
I do not. And I could find a spreadsheet that shows that directly. But the reason why I do not know that is because our positions are listed as what we call FTE. Okay, so I could probably cite an FTE number to you, but the FTE number is not going to equate people.
Okay, what's the FTE? I'm just trying to get a sense of the scale, so the FTE number would be helpful too. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. If it's something you need to get back to us, that's.
I would be more comfortable getting back to you. Yeah, just because I don't want to inflate a number and then not be accurate.
And so I was at the board meeting that I know was tough, I'm sure, for the staff there and for the board members. But we all got a sense of what the feeling of the parents and the teachers and the kids who attended that meeting, which was very much against any sort of reduction in force. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, do you see a relationship between teacher vacancy rate and the absenteeism problem in Richmond?
Thank you for the question. I do want to follow up by saying the action that was taken by our board at that meeting did list the final number of positions.
Right, sure, okay,
Yeah,
we can look
we
that
can
up.
look
Yeah,
at
thank
the
you.
pre-Cs and it will list it there. I heard the comments and I want to say I appreciate Ms. Sam Clear. I actually hired her as a brand new first-year teacher at Stige Elementary, and I appreciate her advocacy. I acknowledge that some of our schools are difficult to staff, but I do not believe, I believe that our families send their students to school to get an education because they trust us to do so. And that even if we have to place a substitute teacher in a space, that we've got someone there to provide instruction. Now, with that said, I will own the issue that sometimes it is more complicated than that. And if the vacancy cannot be filled with a long-term substitute that we're able to train to do the job, then there is an impact to students. And we're aware of that, and we're doing everything that we can to address that on a one-by-one basis. What we can't do is force members of a union to go into a site that they don't choose to go to. If there are vacancies across the district, then they can select any one of those vacancies they want to fill. Not sure if the council is aware, but in order to address the number of classrooms that did not have permanent teachers assigned, our district made the bold and difficult decision to reassign some teachers back to the classroom in January. Teachers that were on special assignment, working in departments. We actually asked that those teachers, place the needs of our students first and go back and serve our students directly in their classrooms. We were able to do that for about 19 teachers, and we had more than 19 vacancies. And in many cases, in most cases, those teachers who were reassigned did not take positions in our most difficult to fill schools. So that is an example of something we're trying in order to address this issue, but it's also an example of one of the barriers that exists as we try to place people in the schools. What we are really trying to do is ensure that schools have the support that they need in order to retain these teachers and in order to create environments where not only our teachers are willing to hone their craft, stay and support these communities, but also we're providing great support to students and families as well. An example is currently one of our schools is difficult to fill and has been historically difficult to fill. What we've done is we've realized that part of the issue is we need to provide them more support and training, and so those teachers hired at that school actually have an additional compensation for additional training in order to ensure that they have the support and they're given the help to build the skills to be successful in that school setting.
No, I have no doubt that it's multifactorial, right? Like
Yes.
teacher vacancies, but the thing I want to focus on, because I think this is sort of the bulk of your presentation, is sort of the relationship between the budget that the school system is laying out and then the perception that because the budget is in crisis, that, we have to have the potential reduction in force letters, we have to be ready, at some, for a while it seemed like 75 teachers were going to be laid off, which is very obviously destabilizing for everybody. Yes. And I'll just, in a nutshell, when the teachers union came, the gist of their presentation, which is also another good presentation, was that the school district has a projection problem when it does budgeting. It tends to overestimate what the expenses are going to be. It underestimates the amount of revenue, and it opts to save more than is legally necessary, which is basically putting those things all together. It creates an artificial crisis, sort of a sense that we're going to have a shortfall, and then at the end of the year, it's like, oh, we didn't, we had a surplus. Oh, we didn't, we were able to save more than we anticipated. And, you know, in a way, like, obviously everyone prefers to have a surplus than a deficit, but if in order to get there, you're doing things like reducing the number of teachers in classrooms, and that's having an effect on education. I think the phrase I've heard is today's dollars should be spent on today's students. Absolutely. And so I will just tell you, like, I'm not going to read the whole email because it's not, you know, if we don't have time, and this will be my last question, but I did email, I think Lynn Mackey, who's the Contra Costa County Superintendent of Schools, sent us a presentation after the teacher's presentation, laying out some things. And I asked her, you know, because I didn't know if you were, you know, this wasn't set up yet. And so I said the same thing I just said to you. Mm-hmm. And she basically, not just basically, she agreed. She, like, I'm reading from the email. In our review of the last 4, this is Lynn Mackey, if in our review of the last 4 fiscal years, 2021, 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24, we noticed that the district ends each year with more revenue than initially projected when the budget was adopted. On the next question, in our review of the last 4 fiscal years, we noticed that the district's actual spending was often lower than what was budgeted, indicating a tendency to overestimate expenses. And then she admits that, like, you're saving at a rate higher than what's necessary under law, is for the reason that it's fiscally prudent to maintain a reserve greater than the state minimum requirement of 3% to allow the district to address unforeseen expenses. And so I appreciate how much you put into the presentation you gave, but I was really looking for a slide that said, like, no, we're not doing that this year. But I still have the concern that your projections are so conservative that it is creating an artificial sense of urgency that isn't there.
Thank you for the question. I want to put a few things in perspective. And I'll start with the comment that our unprojected revenue was 18 million. Okay, so I did hear that in one of the comments this evening. The reality of that is 17 million of that is actually restricted grants that we were just awarded. We could not anticipate when building the budget that this money was coming. That's an example of what happens when we're building our budget. So we don't have all of the information initially. We have to project. We have to look at our level of expenditures. We have to look at what we expect to bring in, and we have to build a budget. Now, I'll go to our ending balance for last year. The restricted fund, very healthy. Many of those grants are multi-year grants, which is why you're never going to see a zero balance when we close the books on restricted funds. Much of that money is meant to last across years. I'm sure you receive grants. You receive 2-year grants, 3-year grants, 5-year grants. Well, they all show up in our budget sheet, even if we are going to take 5 years to spend them. So the restricted budget is going to show increases in revenue. And what happens when people discuss budget, they want to discuss our combined budget. We are very healthy on the restricted side. So if you put the restricted money with the unrestricted money, sure, it looks like we have money to spend. What I've been trying to do, and what I started doing as a chief business officer, is separating the two. We do not have a structural deficit on the restricted side of the house. We do have a structural deficit on the unrestricted side of the house. Combining those two creates these narratives that money is being held back. Last year, on the unrestricted side of the house, we had a balance of 7 million. I think we had projected a balance of more than 7 million. But to put that into perspective, on the unrestricted budget, 7 million is 2% of the budget. So although 7 million is a large amount of money, it's 2% of the budget. Our monthly payroll exceeds 20 million. We spend 85% of our unrestricted funds on salaries and benefits. So when I hear these narratives about we're not planning efficiently, well, I'm going to need you to separate restricted from unrestricted before entering in that conversation, because those are very different things. We're audited. We have to, when we have our unaudited actuals, we have to look at our projections based upon what we spent. And if we're less than 2%, if we're more than 2% off of what we projected, we have to send a justification to the state. So I'm giving you that information to say that this narrative that we're over-projecting and that we're padding the budget, it simply isn't true.
I know I said I wouldn't do any more questions, so the last question is, why can't you pay teachers with the restricted funds? Like, I looked at those, they look like program costs that would have teachers and classified and classified
Very
staff.
good question. I appreciate that because I also heard the comment that we spent millions and millions of dollars of our restricted money on teacher salaries. The reality is our largest restricted program is special education. Every special education teacher lives in a restricted budget of special education. But if you pay close attention to our budget, the special education program is significantly underfunded. In fact, our contribution to the special education restricted program was over $100 million projected in our current projection. So when you look at our books, it says we're paying hundreds of special education teachers out of the restricted budget. The reality is our contribution to be able to afford those teachers comes out of the general fund. The restricted budget does not pay for a lot of teachers. In fact, I created a graphic to share with our different departments and our different labor leaders to show that the restricted budget pays for only a few teachers, and those are teachers in the area of college and career, some in the area of the arts. They are not classroom teachers. So that is another narrative that we need to really work to drill deep into to dispel that, because combining restricted and combining unrestricted does not do our budget justice. And when you make a blanket statement to say we had all these teachers, we paid all these teachers with restricted fund, that simply isn't true when you look at the amount of money we've had to contribute to get those teachers paid.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Jimenez.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming and do this presentation. I think like for us it's important to know this, especially when we are hearing that there is cuts and layoffs that are going to affect the kids in Richmond, and this is or the people that we are here to protect and serve as well.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate that. So I have a few questions. One is, how many school districts in this area, like nearby, or the ones that you put out there, had a Fund 17?
Very good question. You'd have to check district by district, but I can only speak to the district where I personally know the CBO and have had discussions about what's happening with their budget. And this is pre-current year, because everybody's experiencing what the state calls a fiscal cliff, because everybody's restricted funds and pandemic funds have run out. So this is kind of an interesting year where I'm sorry.
So I just want, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
That's
for
okay.
the sake of, we have a really big budget item after this. And if you can be more succinct, like how many out of the ones that you presented today have a Fund 17?
Well, I can't tell you how many have a Fund 17, but I think what it would be important to look at is how many have a fund balance. It is very unusual for a district to operate in the way in which we're operating, and that's year to year, trying to match expenditures with revenues. School districts have built-in safeguards to ensure that they don't run out of money. Our built-in safeguard to ensure that we don't run out of money unexpectedly is that Fund 17. So I could do some research for you and get that information to you, but the reality is not every district has an account that they place money in. They just leave the money in their ending
And
balance.
legally, they had to have 60%, or what is the minimum?
Say it one more time.
Legally, what is the minimum and the maximum that a fund like that has to have from the budget? What is the percentage?
There is no legal minimum or maximum for a Fund 17. There is for the 3% state reserves that we must keep set aside as a result of rule, that is 3%. Best practice in the industry is actually 10% or more, depending upon how large your district is, because every district is interested in making sure that they have money to fall back on if there is an emergency.
And I had two more questions, and I leave it to other. There was a statement saying that, and I heard it not only here, but I heard it before, that the 10 millions for the math curriculum, you rejected them. So can you explain why?
That actually, there has not been a rejection. I will share just a small amount of what's happening there, because the reality is that is a decision that I intend to bring to our board. We were approached by an organization and asked to apply for their grant. We did not apply for their grant. And if you haven't applied for a grant, you can't deny a grant. So the narrative that we've denied money, that's inaccurate. There's also an inaccurate, well, I'll just share with you that a curriculum purchase is a one-time expense. And what we try to do is match one-time expenses with restricted funds. Our district has identified one-time restricted funds that can cover the cost of the curriculum that we need to buy for math. And I will share with you that I have reached out to the organization to ask for other partnerships, not math curriculum, where we could invest the money that they'd like to direct into West Contra Costa. So I have not denied any opportunities to bring more funding in. I'm having conversations to find another way in order to partner with that organization, because the responsibility to implement a new curriculum, it cannot be privatized. It needs to be led by our district. And there, I believe, is an attempt to privatize a decision that needs to be made by our district. But by no means are we denying money. We did not apply for the grant, so we couldn't be.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, I'm saying we want that money, and I'm trying to work really hard to get that money, but the money comes with stipulations, and in this moment, I didn't feel comfortable taking that on. I'm happy to direct it to the board.
Okay, thank you. I have, well, I said that I was having two questions before, but I had two questions right now, and this it will be.
Sure.
What was the budget for contracts budgeted, and then how much was the actuals?
Thank you for the question. I don't have a budget sheet in front of me, but I want to just put that question into perspective. In the unrestricted general fund, 85% of those revenues are paid to salaries and benefits. That leaves only 15% of that budget for operating services and any contracts that we might need. That is not a lot of money to spend on contracts. We have a lot of restricted contracts. And an example would be every one of our schools that has an after-school program has multiple contracts related to that after-school program. So when people say that we are heavy on contracts, the reality is the majority of those contracts are direct services to students paid with restricted one-time monies. We do not have an abundance of contracts in our unrestricted fund. In fact, because of our fiscal position, our board has directed us to find other ways to fund contracts.
It will be good to have like how much is budgeted and how much the actual, so we also know like what are the services of that. Like that will be great. And my last question is, you mentioned about some kind of like potential partnership, and one of the things was like housing teachers. What are you planning to do with Adams School up in Arlington? Is that Adams School, like up in Arlington, because Adams? Because that could be like, this is a prime real estate asset, and that could be a way for us to partner in terms of like, if it's really serious about building houses for teachers.
Thank you for the question, but that's a question you'd have to direct to our governance team. As interim superintendent, I'm not involved in those decisions about the future of our properties, but I think that if you reached out to any one of our board members, they'd be willing to answer your question.
Okay, that will be good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Robinson?
It's been a long night. Thank you for answering all these questions. Thank you for coming.
Sure.
When I heard that we have collaborative meetings, we're supposed to have collaborative meetings, but those collaborative meetings haven't happened for a couple of years. That was kind of disturbing, especially considering, you know, the state of kind of crisis that key partners are not meeting. So my first question is, can we get those collaborative meetings restarted, like immediately?
That is a great question, and that's a question I'd also have to discuss with the governance team. I am sure, I mean, we're always willing to collaborate. In fact, I've only been in this interim role since December, and the only collaboration I know of currently is a systems change collaborative that I do know that the city does participate in terms of a separate collaboration between the city council and the school district. I think I need to do some research on what that did look like and what we need to do to bring it back, but I am sure that's something that our board and our district will support and welcome.
Like on that note, I'd really like, I have some other kinds of things. So I'm also a lifetime Richmond resident. I think you graduated in the same class as my brother at Kennedy in 89. And he went to Adams as well. And I think y'all were together the whole time. But, you know, I remember when I was at Kennedy that we were facing similar issues with achievement.
Yes, and we've been looking at the historical trends of what's happening with our achievement, and you know, if we had the answers to that today, I think that we would all be extremely ecstatic in order to implement new things. It's something that we're working on. I think it's a combination of some of the trends in education, some of the issues with our social economic status, and but most of all, I think it is supporting our schools to continue to receive the best training in order to ensure that our instruction, our Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction in our classrooms is the best that it can be. I agree. I don't actually have an answer, but I think that what I'm trying to convey is that in this role as the leader of the district, we need to move forward and find solutions. And I think that in terms of the conversations that we're having at the cabinet table, we're not confused about that. And we're trying to make that our focus, as I'm sure it has been historically, but it continues to be a problem that is difficult to resolve. And it's not just our district, it's other districts as well. It's just difficult to pinpoint exactly how we can get the quickest road to increased achievement. I just haven't seen any district do that well. It's taken time, and unfortunately, we haven't built the momentum in order to make the impact and the results for our students, but we're dedicated to continuing to work at that.
It's like, I'm sitting here listening to the stats tonight, and I'm thinking about how we have such a responsibility to the kids that are born and raised here who need an education that's going to lead to the futures that they're hoping for. And, you know, it's been 30 years since I was at Kennedy, and to see it facing the same, similar or worse achievement is disheartening, maybe?
Absolutely.
It's like, how many years do you keep saying the same thing before people just kind of give up hope, right, in the institution? I also have questions because, you know, what I'm hearing also is that the Richmond schools in particular are the ones that are most difficult to fill, that have decreased enrollments, that have the highest absenteeism, that have the most vacancies. And so that is also disturbing to me as somebody who knows that education and schooling is one of the kind of the anchors of our community, right? Like that's how we build healthy communities. That's one of the key elements. And it's obviously, if this is what's happening, it's obviously seriously broken for many, many decades. And so I do wonder, one, can we please get those meetings started? If we've never met like that before, can we start meeting like that? Two, can we pull the stats specifically for Richmond schools so that we don't have to guess or have rumor or whatnot, but actually see, well, what is the vacancies in Richmond schools? What are the vacancies? How many classrooms, kindergarten or otherwise, have a long-time sub? What is happening? What is the absenteeism? What is the kind of enrollment trend year over year for these schools? And which schools of the Richmond schools are kind of known to be difficult to fill spots, places where teachers don't want to go? I feel like if we could look at that picture collectively and then kind of brainstorm on what might be possible in terms of turning that number around, collect as a collaborative effort, then we can maybe get somewhere. Would the district be willing to do that? Is this something that we need to bring directly to the board members? How do we make this happen?
So thank you for that. It sounds like we need to do a deep dive into root causes for these issues in Richmond, which I would welcome. And I think that it's a conversation that I need to have with the governing board just on how to get this restarted. But as I said before, I think that it's valuable for both the city and the district to work together. And I think that that is something that we all want. So if I get the green light from the board, I can set those meetings up immediately. I just need to know from your city council how you'd like those structured and how your council, what your council will support in moving forward with that.
And then finally, what I didn't see in your presentation was kind of an outline of where specifically the $7 million in cuts were coming from. Is that available?
Yes, absolutely. So these are presentations that we've presented to our board. I can say that the fiscal solvency plan was presented January 27th. So if you look back, that's the date that comes up for me. But if you look back at our board agenda from that date, there's a presentation and a plan outlined, which includes an executive summary that also shares our issues and what we're trying to address, but it can be found there.
And does it also include the potential cuts that would get you to the $6 million for the next year?
It does. If you look at the fiscal solvency plan that was presented, and it was in January, I may have the date wrong, but if you look at those agendas in January, you will see a fiscal solvency plan attached to the agenda, and it's all outlined there for the $7 million and the $6 million.
Okay. Well, I don't think we're going to answer or get to the bottom of any of these issues tonight. I feel like we really need to start collaborating more. And I know my focus is Richmond. I also know that there are people, Richmond kids, who go to school in El Cerrito and in El Sobrante and other places. But I feel if we could narrow the focus, especially if it seems Richmond schools seem to be where some of the biggest problems are, that maybe we can make some headway. Because currently, whatever we're doing currently isn't working and hasn't been working for 30 years. Yes. So we got to try something new and different. Thank you.
Agree. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Cepeda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you and good evening. Thanks for being here. I was able to meet with the board president over the weekend, and I learned a lot. And one of the questions that I have, and trying to share this out as well, do you know when the state is going to tell you how much money they're going to be giving for the next year? And where I'm going with that question is because are we putting chicken before the egg or whatever that is, because you're creating a budget with a little bit of unknown. So
how does that happen? Very good question. So based upon how we register our average daily attendance data, we are required to continually give updates to the state, and it's those updates that we use to make the projections for what we'll receive in the next year. However, there's a complicated formula to it because we're funded in a few different ways. We get a general allocation, which is just strictly based upon our average daily attendance, and there's an amount per student per grade level that you get, and that's how your unrestricted general fund is amount is identified, but there's also a local control funding formula there's an LCAP, a Local Control Accountability Plan, where we get some additional supplemental funds added to the unrestricted budget in order to support the needs of students who have specific needs. So so that funding source is separate, and the funding formulas for that source is separate. But I think what I'd like to home in on is that we look at the trends, we look at what we know in the moment to be true, and we have to make a determination based upon the formula set forth by the county and the state of how we estimate what we're going to get the following year. We're also required to update that amount at each interim. So if we were off a little bit by what we expected, then it shows up in the books at the interim report, and we're usually pretty spot on. There hasn't been a year that we were far off on what we expected to receive.
Okay, thank you for that. And if you were to have a RIF, would you still meet the class size per the agreement? How is that going to be affected?
Thank you for that question. I would like to make sure that there's an understanding that when we have a reduction in force, it does not impact our ability to staff a classroom. We look at the number of students enrolled at each school, and we look at what the staffing ratio is. As for example, for grades kindergarten through second, we need 1 teacher for every 22 students. So we look at the enrollment and we assign 1 teacher for every 22 students. Same thing for 4th through 6th grade, we assign 1 teacher for every 30 students. So our staffing model goes by the enrollment at the school site. So when we say there's a reduction in force, we aren't losing classroom teachers because we're required to provide classroom teachers. So you're never going to see a reduction in force where we're short teachers because we're required to staff at the levels required by enrollment. So the reduction in force does not impact our ability to provide a teacher for every student in the system.
So who would, the RIFs are not teachers, they are?
Thank you for that question. So included in the educators that we're discussing in terms of the reduction in force, that includes all certificated educators, classroom teachers, specialty teachers, counselors, nurses, teachers on special assignment, special education teachers with special credentials. So when we say teachers are being reduced, we're not talking about classroom teachers unless we're adjusting for enrollment. Now, if enrollment goes down and you need less teachers, yes, there's a reduction, but there's not a reduction because of the budget. There's a reduction because of the need. So the reductions that are happening, the reduction in force letters that we're hearing about are not teachers that we need to staff our classrooms. They are teachers on other assignments to provide other services, or they're teachers that have been reduced because enrollment went down.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification there. Are you able to share a little bit more about why the schools that are difficult to fill, and what do you see as something that could be done? Is it increasing teacher pay in those schools? Is it incentivizing them differently? What can we do for those there?
I think that addressing the needs of a specific school site does require a collaborative effort in order to understand the needs of the community. I think that our district is extremely large and our needs vary school by school. So I can't prescribe a set of strategies that I think will work for every school. I think we need to do what we've been striving to do all this time, is identify root causes and address them. The issues with our schools that are difficult to take off is that you have to have consistent staffing in order to ensure that your momentum continues. So I think that I absolutely agree that it is a goal to work on our compensation package because we need teachers that will stay. But as a former principal of Steege Elementary School, which is one of the schools that's difficult to staff, I will tell you that after having served at that school for 4 years, staff that I recruited after 3 years would say, "Oh, I'm going to go teach in El Cerrito now." So Teachers, you hire them for one school, but they can move around as much as they want, and there's a perception that other sites are easier. So there really has to be a dedication where teachers will stay. They have to be tethered to the community and stay in that space to serve that community in order to build a momentum and a strong program that you can be consistent with year over year.
Thank you. I would like to learn a little bit more, but maybe we'll take that offline because see if there's anything that we can do to help. I went to Richmond schools as well. It was Helms, Richmond High, and Richmond High, I'm pretty sure is on the list of not very easy. So what can we do to make sure that we incentivize? I had wonderful teachers, hence why I'm here, and I see some of them around all the time. Question on slide 11. Can you share a little bit about what happened in fiscal year 2019? It has you have some fund transfers in there. COVID happened in 2020, so that's understandable that you have to fund 17 transfers in.
Yeah,
looks like a very large amount. But what happened in 2019?
Sorry. Thank you for that question. So the reality is, just before the COVID pandemic struck, our CBO at the time, which was Dr. Tony Wold, had already began to let school sites, administrators, and central office staff know that we were in a fiscal crisis and we would have to make reductions because we did not have enough revenue to meet our expenditures. What happened in that year is we simply ran out of money. And we were we were positioned to need to make extremely deep cuts in that year in order to stay fiscally solvent and retain local control. If you notice, one of the things I placed in our packet is our lack of going concern letter that was issued, I believe, in 2022, and it outlines pretty effectively the issues that our district has historically had with overspending the revenue. And that hasn't been on purpose, but it's been because of obligations that our district has entered into that actually ended up being larger than expected. I'll leave it at that. But the reality is, if COVID had not happened and we got over $100 million in COVID pandemic relief money over 4 years. That allowed us for some padding to rebuild up Fund 17 in that following year and to slowly address our structural deficit. What didn't happen when we got those additional funds are reductions. And because reductions weren't made, we really didn't need to reduce. We had an influx of restricted money that was actually liberally spent. But now we don't have that money, and reductions are required, not just for us, but if you're, any given night on the news, you see a school district that's needing to close schools or lay off teachers. It's happening across the state because everybody had gotten accustomed to that extra padding provided by the pandemic funding, and it is gone.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
In regards to the contracts that you mentioned, can you share more about what kind of contracts these are? Are they nonprofits? I know they're serving the kids, but what are these contracts?
Absolutely. So one of our largest vendors is BACR, Bay Area Community Resources. And we have many contracts with this organization, but the majority, if not all of them, I can't say that it's all, but I would say the majority is restricted funding, and they provide services for after-school program in Richmond. They provide services for counseling. They provide services across our health centers. They provide services to support with recess. So all of these services are supplemental in addition to our base. And we're able to use restricted dollars to bring in that contractor in order to provide those services. The reality is, if we did not use a contract, it's very likely that we would not be able to attract enough staff to provide the services of after school. If we didn't have those contracts, it's very possible that we couldn't afford to pay all those people because contracts come at a discounted rate. Usually there are additional philanthropic organizations that support with those contracts as well. So those are the types of services that we are mostly seeing in our contracts. The other part is what's coupled into this budget is our individual site budgets as well. Every school has a budget that it uses to provide services that they select as a school. Well, any of the contracts that those schools enter into show in our bottom line as if it's the central office creating these contracts, but it isn't. It's the school sites. So there are different levels of contracting, and there are different areas in which contracts come in. But all of them are usually direct student services. We also have contracts for professional development, but those, we have an educator effectiveness fund. We have restricted funds to pay for professional development contracts as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Has there, excuse me, has there been a conversation to potentially talk to our state superintendent of public instruction, Tony Thurman, to see if we can figure out, because it sounds like the calculation is working against us. We have an issue of truancy, and then we're getting less money, so we potentially will have fewer teachers, and we have fewer teachers, we have more truancy. Is there a way to look at the number that we should be servicing instead of those that are actually showing up, and then putting that money to try to recapture some of the students to come back to school?
Yeah, I would always advocate for an opportunity to ask for more funding for schools. The reality is the way in which schools are funded is dependent upon the Prop 98 guarantee. It's very much driven by legislation and not so much by an individual decision. However, the restricted funds that I'm speaking of, many of them come out of the state legislature in the form of bills to support different areas of education. So I think lobbying for additional funds for schools is a great thing to do, because it's not just West Contra Costa that has this funding issue. It's a statewide issue, and the state is aware of it. And I think that if we voice our opinions and continue to push for better funding in the future, that eventually it can happen. But that's above my pay grade, but that's my recommendation. We should always try.
Thank you. Maybe we can team up on that and try to work on that together. Thank you. You also mentioned the community safety and school traffic safety in one of your slides. Is that something that is around the schools that maybe we can help with? So now I'm going to talk about sort of partnership. How do we move towards more partnership as well? Can we put more crosswalks? Could we put more signage?
Absolutely, all of the above. One of the areas in which we, especially in our elementary schools, we worry about the safety of students walking to and from school, and that's just low-hanging fruit on something that the city and the district can work together with, since, you know, you have the safety issues that you address with our city streets. So that's an idea that came to mind when I was principal at Wilson Elementary, which is now Obama. We had wonderful traffic guards that helped students get across Barrett Avenue. We don't have that anymore. So those are the kind of areas in which I think we can look at some of the safety issues that might be impacting our students and work together to address those. We also have, you know, what comes with a tight budget is some unfunded projects. And some of those unfunded projects can really make a difference for the success of our students and the growth of our program. So we could also talk about individual projects as well.
Perfect. We'll have to see if maybe have a list. We can try to check them off little by little, crosswalks, anything infrastructure that the city might already be working on. And maybe we can look to prioritize the ones around the schools first so that we can partner there. In regards to the teacher housing, I know the district has a lot of vacant properties. Have you started looking at those to either sell them off to try to get some revenue, but also to build?
So at tomorrow's board meeting, we are presenting the resolution at our school board meeting in support of workforce housing and the assembly bill that's being brought forth by Representative Arreguin. And so we are absolutely doing our part to support the future of workforce housing, and West Contra Costa is really ensuring that not only the state but the community knows that we're invested in exploring that and moving it forward.
Perfect, thank you. And then I think my last one's here, transportation. You also mentioned transportation being an issue. Can you define that a little bit more? Do you need school buses? Is it cars? What do the kids and the families need to get to and from school? How can we help resolve that?
Yeah, I think that's something we can explore together, because I think that is going to vary by community. Some communities have, you know, they're close enough where students can walk to school, which is why the safety is so important. But there are other communities where the school is far from the boundary lines. And I think those areas are areas in which we need to examine how we can support. But I don't have an answer for that this evening. I think it's something we need to collect data on and have conversation.
Okay. Let us know if there's anything we can help out with that as well. We have Richmond Moves, which is might not be a 100% solution, but it might be something a little bit that might be able to help out. And no other questions for now. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I forgot to mention two things. One, my husband was a teacher at Richmond High. Two, I'm currently the liaison to the school district. So any suggestions, please let me know. And this is this invitation for you for a presentation is because I just wanted to get a glimpse of how things are. As I understand, meetings are bi-monthly. The next meeting is on April 30th. It's on Zoom, and I assume it's public, so I'll post the link on social media for people who are interested to attend. I just was appointed by the mayor to this position. I missed the last meeting because I was notified a bit too late. But I'm very excited and looking forward to the collaboration. I took notes of some of the issues you mentioned, some of the suggestions my colleague brought up, and I'm very excited about it. And thank you very much again for accepting the invitation. Excellent presentation. I'm very happy and very excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Robinson.
Okay, so I had, while we were listening to comments, I did have an opportunity to look up what the actual cuts were and just have some questions about this. So it looks like from the agenda, it looks like that of the 7,219,000, 6,635,000 are coming from staffing. And of that staffing, 26 positions were suggested for reductions from the United Teachers of Richmond. So those are all teaching positions? They're not all teaching positions?
No, so if we take a look, I'm looking for my document here so that I can be specific with you as well. Are you looking at the document or just the diagram?
I'm looking at the document. I'm looking at the presentation that was posted with the agenda item. And you know, it outlines different places. This is that, you know, there's cuts, $1 million in cuts from secondary schools, $1 million in cuts from college and career, 500,000 from independent studies, 500,000 from special education, 700,000 for special education services, with that 5 teachers indicated there. So I guess I'm just trying to understand. This sounds like 26 United Teachers of Richmond positions, and then, you know, the other types of positions were far less, like less than, almost double the reductions are from the United Teachers, and the rest are from administrative positions. So of the 43 cuts, 26 are United Teachers of Richmond.
Yes.
And the rest are administrative.
Yes, so if we look at, and I'm looking for the reduction list that we approved at the February meeting, because the reduction list actually lists the positions. So what you're looking at is just impact to unit. But as I explained earlier, in that unit are counselors, nurses, several different positions, not just classroom teachers.
So we cut counselors, nurses.
Excuse me, your time is up. I'll let you finish this question, and then we'll have to move on.
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess my concern, again, is it looks like the deep cuts are coming from direct services to children.
Well, so I think we need to go through that line by line, because as explained before, the fiscal solvency plan is also, we're able to align based upon our current needs. So for example, I believe there was a 1.0 counselor on there. Well, that's because there's a reduction in the enrollment in high school. So the numbers are going down, so the need for counselor is going down as well. So we have to, and I'm willing to do this with you, and I can send you a summary after the meeting, line by line, why those positions were selected for reductions. It isn't that we're attempting to reduce services, it's that we're attempting to align services. There were 7.5 classroom teachers in that, but those classroom teachers were tied to special schedules. they were in excess of the 35-to-1 ratio of how we staff our schools. So I think we need to go line by line so that you understand not just what's
Do you
being
ever worry
recommended.
that this is just a race to the bottom? Like you're just going to keep cutting until there's nothing
Excuse me?
left?
I appreciate your line of questioning, but you have used your time.
That's fine.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
happy to follow up.
Is there anyone else who wants to? No? Then we're finished. Thank you so much. But I think the line of questioning that Councilmember Robinson was making is a very good one, and I think it's one that needs to be pursued. So I hope that you do find the time to go line by line with it, so that and then share the information so that the rest of us can be informed. So thank you.
Absolutely happy to do it. Thank you.